So today it is considered that 30 to 40 billion devices are having IoT capabilities, and they can be connected, they can be identified, they can be tracked, and most important, you can communicate to them. It is machine talking to machine. This is a reality that we are getting used to. And this reality started years ago when the concept of IoT was developed, was brought back in 1999. Of course, this concept has generated lots of meets, a lot of fairs, and we all have seen movies where all these machines are dominating the world, and this has created a lot of comments. But for sure, this has become a real technological journey, and every journey means a lot of opportunities, and this is what we are going to be exploring today. I've been years waiting to say what I'm going to say right now, but finally we have Intel inside. Hi, John. Hi, Stevan. How are you?
Nice to meet you, Paco.
So, coming from Intel, you are one of the leader chip manufacturers in the world, and I think today we are getting impacted by a lot of supply chain, issues, and most of them are normally having the excuse of the chip shortages. So I don't want to miss the opportunity to ask you, hey, what is happening there? Is there any light in the tunnel? What is happening in the chip manufacturing right now?
So, Paco, thank you very much first for the opportunity to be here. And on that, chip shortages, we've seen various reasons that impacted many industries on the shortages. What Intel is doing is with the very recent announcement of big investments in not developing only Intel's factories, but also with Intel's foundry businesses, where we could enable other industries and other customers to come and utilize Intel's vast manufacturing capability with the new factories, with the foundry business, where we would be actually manufacturing products for other industries, for other customers, because that has affected all the industries just as well as our own. For instance, our, let's say, PC manufacturers, if they were missing, let's say, just a simple Wi-Fi chip, they couldn't sell and they could not launch or promote the whole complete units. So it has actually had a ripple effect through many industries, automotive, computers, but also all the embedded markets where a lot of our products are launched into.
Yeah, that's a good point. Also, because you mentioned this morning, John, that the demand has been growing up, and this is really one of the key elements in this impact, right?
It is. I mean, it's like a bit like a perfect storm. I mean, I hate to keep talking about COVID, but COVID actually working from home, it was fantastic that we are where we are with technology today, because it enabled people to do that. And for the majority of jobs, not all, but it meant a lot of people could actually stay at home, stay safer than they would have been otherwise able to do. But in order to do that, of course, they needed some workstations, PCs. So companies had to equip them with those. In addition, cloud service providers had to beef up their applications to allow sharing and for online meetings to occur. And all of that drove the demand from those organizations for additional chips from the marketplace, including Intel. And now, as we're finally coming out of the COVID era, where people are working from home and going back into the offices, back into the high street shops, that's driving another surge of demand where people may not have been spending in those areas for the last 2.5 years. And now there's another wave of demand going in there, as well as all the technology that's going into vehicles these days.
Yeah, so the back to the new normality is not going to be back to the same normality that we had 2-3 years ago, right? This has been really impacted.
Correct. We're going to have a new normality. Well, who knows what that's going to be quite yet? Yeah. But I'm pretty sure in my mind it's going to be different to the one we had 3 years ago.
Absolutely.
And maybe, Paco, to add to that, just as COVID or pandemic situation was not something we could predict, to add to what John just mentioned, we also could not predict the surge in demand of the products. But the surge of demand of products came because suddenly the ecosystem, from supply chain, from manufacturers to the consumers, and with the innovation that we drove throughout our whole supply chain, from ISVs, OEMs, resellers, end users, suddenly there was a lot, and it was not questioned anymore. It was what technology can help in order to combat directly reduction of the spread of pandemics, but also on the other side, how can technology help for safe reopening of the economies across any of the industries. So those are some of the things that were not predicted, but we are putting everything we possibly can in place in order to curb and predict future demand. And as already mentioned, it's not anymore even in discussion, can technology help, but it's how quick and what are the new use cases and new user experiences that we can drive. Because suddenly everything is becoming a lot more automatized, and this actually also drives the number of IoT capable devices, where three fundamental things that are always designed from the ground up in any of the products we make, which is connectivity, security, and manageability. So whatever we do across any of the industries, any of the products, applications, they have to be able to be safe, they have to be able to be manageable, and they need to be connected. Because the time of islands of technology is gone. So now all the systems need to provide very clear value benefit to whichever industry or application they are being deployed to. And this is something that, same like our children, our young children, for them the new norm or the starting point of technology is they already know how to use the iPads and new technologies, when some of the older generations, like my mom, they still struggle even with making WhatsApp or Skype calls. So the new norm is actually much higher level of technology that is undisputed now.
Absolutely. When you talk about elder people, I also see my mother, and they are using technology, because I think for us, technology is just a way of living. Of course, we produce, we distribute, we manufacture, But I think you mentioned, you are just focusing one of those concepts, is the experience. And I think it's the experience which is going to be driving the need of that technology. And I think any manufacturer, any distributor, any element playing any role in this industry needs to look at how this is going to be impacting the experience of the users of that technology, like the older people. If it would not be user friendly, they would not be able to use it. So I think it's already an achievement, and this is really helping to expand this technology, right?
Absolutely. I could not agree more, because on our side, from the Intel side, it's not what we make. Nobody will talk from Intel on how many gigahertz, megahertz. It's everybody will talk about what's the end result, what we enable, what is technology enabling, and that enablement and that, I'll call it a la carte menu of services required, that will drive the technology, not anymore what we make and how different products. It's what is the final solution, what kind of user experience, what kind of new usage models. Curb collection did not exist. Now it's a new norm everywhere. So a number of use cases and retention of the clients across different industries, hospitality, hotels that were very, very badly affected, they need to bring the confidence to the returning customers that it is safe to come back, that all the industries and economies are safe to reopen and operate and go forward.
Correct. That's absolutely right. Hey, let's jump now into the IoT. Intel is a big player into the IoT, and IoT is a concept that we've been, as I said in the introduction, we've been dealing with for many years. So how this journey has been, John? I have to say that no one of us is really young. So probably we have seen this already for years, and now we have a certain perspective of what has happened in the past 10, 20 years.
It makes me smile and laugh there, Paco, when you say that, because I've been involved in the IoT industry for probably around about 15 years. Probably started off with my days when I was at Cisco, and there were lots of good slides with lots of zeros behind big numbers, know. And at that time, people were trying to hypothesize what would be the great use cases, and we saw projects fail, some projects succeeded, and then finally there were some very clear use cases that would be of business value and benefit. There were also some good use cases that failed because at the time it was just challenging. First of all, there were lots of complex things that go together to make a good IoT solution. Combination of sensors, protocols, connectivity,
Correct.
Wireless, software layered on top of that, cloud connection, representation of giving visibility, analytics of that data that's going through there. And they're not trivial. And I think what the industry has done has come together, not just as an individual company, but working together as different groups to make it simpler for the SI community, the ISV community to develop and deploy to meet real end customer real needs.
I could not agree, but if I just add, over the last 10 years, if you would, a year ago, 2 years, 5 years ago, ask 10 people, you would probably get 11, if not more, answers what the IoT really means. What has happened over last couple of years, is that the whole industry matured. There has been a lot of direct movements. So IoT is not anymore academic. IoT is not anymore technology proof points.
It's a reality.
IoT is now reality. IoT is now like peeling the onion. In the past, when people were talking about smart city, when they were talking about, now you have an onion and peel the layer. What is smart city? Peel the onion transportation. In Barcelona, you have a fantastic case with location-based advertising in every bus, every train, information about the city, information about relevant to the consumers, promotions to the, let's say, the closest restaurant or whatever.
Correct.
Close to the bus stop that is the next stop. So suddenly it's bringing real not just revenue to advertisers, but it's providing real value to the consumers. Real value is something that IoT has in the past struggled. So that's why you can see a lot of IoT started in manufacturing side, where ultimately IoT is using technologies available like AI, like 5G, to actually do what humans would do just faster. Automatic camera monitoring of the quality of the or defectiveness of products and faster reduction. So IoT is reality, but it has to be taken into why, what, and what are the benefits. So everything is now actually turned into value.
Yep.
IoT is here to stay, and maybe now is going to transform into specific projects, specific views, specific opportunities. Not anymore as academic discussion what IoT could do. It's a real value to the consumers, to users, to brands, to retailer.
That is the experience at the end. This is what we are looking for, and IoT is really meaning a big step into the experience of the customers.
Well, I realized that IoT was mainstream when I came downstairs in my home, and I got my refrigerator with a camera inside.
Talking to the washing machine.
and it told me it needed a software update, my refrigerator. To me, I knew IoT was mainstream.
Absolutely. But you mentioned something important. Also, I think we addressed this in the past. It's like at the beginning, IoT was much more on the different technologies which we're using, how to utilize them, how to make something out of that, And I think one of the biggest trends that we are seeing right now is that the IoT is all about the combination of different technologies. It's not only making sensors, it's not only making screens, it's about how the sensors are combining with the screens to bring value add to the user, right? And this combination is probably one of the biggest opportunities that we can offer to the market as, let's say, role players in this market.
Exactly. It's about, I think the whole industry and industry sectors are looking to try and simplify it for systems integrators, for the ISVs, for the end customers, to try and take the pain out so they can then represent their true value add into their customers, whether that's through back-end integration systems or whether it's through services, whatever that happens to be for them.
Intel, in fact, has been one of the biggest, one of the first companies, who is really stepping into the IoT with a real program to help not only the big names that we all have in our heads, but also helping the SMB landscape of customers, right? So can you tell me a little bit about this program? How is this helping and how this can accelerate the business?
So Intel used to have our aggregator program or alliance program partners, which originally historically was focused on customers, ODMs, OEMs that was specifically buying products from Intel. What we did is we translated or transformed that program, made it a lot more open for the reason that we now actually don't only work in our aggregation program, in our alliance program with customers that buy products, but it's not anymore ODMs. It's now actually a program that actually includes from the OEMs, ODMs, ISVs, SI, value-added resellers. So it includes from the point of design development to the point of consumption. So suddenly now we have a lot more ingredients that we can actually help everybody in that supply chain. One of the examples is that we had in the past program, in the previous program, around 2,000 members. To my very positive surprise, I checked the numbers yesterday. We are over 20,000 members, and big number of them are actually companies or profile of customers that don't buy products, but are using values and benefits of some of the Intel products, platforms, technologies, software solutions to design in and develop new applications for new user experiences, for new applications. That effectively means that we have, let's say, one of the examples is OpenVINO Toolkit. OpenVINO Toolkit includes our CPUs, VPUs, GPUs, programmable FPGAs, which are pre-validated and ready to help to any of those ecosystem players with their time to market for new development of either program, application, software, for their time to market, to get to the market faster with applications that they are focused in their own specific industries or segments.
Yeah, because this is all about, it's not only a marketplace, it's really like a think tank, that you are putting together ISVs, manufacturing, different areas. So everybody can really benefit from the others. Everybody can interact with the others. And this is really the, let's say, the biggest stream, which is bringing this as an opportunity for the market.
Yeah, I see the key advantages to programs that Intel drive is, we call it the ecosystem. It's an overused word, but it really is what that is about, bringing together people from different capabilities, different sections from industry, bringing them together so they can make something that's creative, productive, and useful in the marketplace.
And ultimately driving innovation, not for the sake of innovation, but for benefits of consumers, end users, companies that need to manage or spread or expand, to be able for whatever, if I go back, for whatever geographies, markets, industries they cover, to have their systems connected, secured, and managed.
Absolutely. And so being for so many years in the market, I'm sure that in this IoT industry, you probably can tell me, where do you see the biggest opportunity coming up? It's like, what I mean is, you have seen, as you mentioned, not 2,000, but 20,000 companies joining the program, joining the program. So I wonder, is there any kind of pattern? Is there any kind of line that you see, majority of these customers are looking for this or for that, or majority of these customers are coming from this or from that market, which means there is something happening there, which obviously means an opportunity for some others?
I think from my perspective, the leaders that we've seen today won't necessarily be the same leaders industrial-wise or sector-wise tomorrow. So I think manufacturing have really taken a strong lead in the use of it for predictive maintenance, for example, to take cost out of their production capabilities, to find defects automatically using AI. So the initial versions of AI in there. I think there are far more many use cases that are yet to be fully explored. Another use case, if I choose an example in the UK, in healthcare, there's a big shortage of radiologists. So the trained doctors who analyse scans of various sorts. There's about 30% shortage at the moment, which equates to about 1,000 people, fully trained medical staff. Now, with AI, using the technology there, some of those scans can be pre-scanned using AI to filter out any of the scans that they don't see any problems with. Correct. With a very high percentage of accuracy, and so that they can pass on the scans that they say there's an issue here and pass that on to the fully trained radiologist. Now that won't replace the full 30% gap, but it might reduce it by 10%, which is a big start. And there are use cases like that, and it's generally about the acceptance of technologies like that within the sectors.
And if I may add, one other very, very interesting trend we have seen in specific market that you, John, mentioned is AI is not replacing humans. However, AI is taking mistakes out. So there has been a number of examples where due to human error, some of the scans were missed by humans.
Yeah.
And AI flagged them back. And suddenly radiologists, when they looked deeper into that, they said, actually, I missed this. But AI picked it and brought it back to my attention. I spend more time because it's about, pressure of people with the lack of or not enough radiologists. They're also under the push and strain on having certain number of scans looked through. So AI actually is doing what humans do, just faster, and to certain percent reducing actually even the error, the miss times, because it's faster. It's just doing what it's trained.
It's funny you mentioned that, because at the beginning when I made the introduction, I was referring to the myths and the fears, and one of those, if not the biggest one, is really like, is this technology going to replace people?
Yeah.
We have been also having some podcasts and some conferences with people which is who are experts in the robotics, and also at the end it's always the biggest questions they always have is about this. Hey, are robots going to be substitution? And the answer is always no. No, it's going to be an addition. And of course, there is going to be a swap, between different jobs. And if you do this is now being done by the robot or by the IoT, capabilities. But there will be other new ones being created, So that is not, it's just a transformation.
It's an
and I think this
interesting
is the right
conversation. I know you were commenting on how young
We're going out of IoT now.
How young I looked earlier on, right?
Of course, sure.
I was around the days where the internet was being developed and evolved, and the early days of the internet, there was exactly the same set of conversations going on, but nobody understood the number of jobs that were going to be created by cybersecurity specialists,
Exactly.
web developers, all the applications that have flowed out of the internet and the internet generation. As we sit here now, can't imagine all the additional jobs that are going to flow out of the AI evolution that we're going to be experiencing over the next 10 years.
Absolutely. I think this is all about, and I'm going to the next step now. This is all about the digital transformation that we are seeing in the market, right? So, and then, of course, I think one of the biggest worries, especially when I talk from the Blue Star point of view, we deal with a big number of small and medium customers, and they always say that, well, some of these technologies are only for the big guys, only for the big insanes, I don't know if it's the right word, but the big names in the market. So I wonder, how do you see the landscape of the IoT from your perspective, as being a big player, a big manufacturer? How do you see the landscape for these SMBs, for these medium and small customers? Do they have a chance? Do they need to do something now? Is there a place for them?
If I maybe just say, that's a beauty of industries. From Intel side, we actually work incredibly close with, and that's why we have 20,000 members in our alliance program. Because a lot of innovation is actually driven by creative small companies, and they to large extent impact what the big guys are moving, because they are much faster, much easier to change, much easier to adopt new technologies. And this is where Intel, as I mentioned already, OpenVINO toolkit helps them to develop new usages, new applications, new experiences for the consumers that maybe bigger guys might adopt later on or collaborate with the so-called, as you mentioned, smaller, medium-sized businesses to actually take them to market, to the volume, to scale across countries, regions, geographies, and industries. But it's incredibly important to have diversity and as many people would call it, diverse ecosystem, fragmented ecosystem, because that drives innovation. And we are fully supporting and fully behind that. And we really want to see that, simply because applications we use now, and as John mentioned, leaders in some of the industries probably are not going to be leaders in 5 years, because the internet is full of examples.
Don't tell them.
Of companies that actually got too entrenched. Yeah. And that's why even if we look ourselves, we are a big company, but our culture has changed into number of different business units which actually having the startup mentality.
Correct. I think you mentioned something which really catch my attention. You're talking about diversity and fragmentation, which to me it's a kind of tricky message, right? Because dealing with diversity is something dealing with fragmentation is much more difficult, I would say, especially from the point of view of addressing an opportunity to the market. Correct?
Yeah. So, I think of it at the moment where we are at this point in time is we're moving towards, and it's a word I'm not overly fond of, but it describes things correctly, as democratization of AI.
Yeah.
So AI, if you talk to one person, it will mean something completely different to another. However, up until this point in time, largely, if you want to get involved in AI, you either need data analysts, you need some specialist staff who are expensive resources to have on the books. And that's out of the limits for some of these SMB organizations you were talking about. It's going back to the early days of the internet. That's no different to the early web page designers. You needed specialist people to code web pages, whereas now you can download applications of the internet free of charge and develop your own web page in a very easy manner for somebody who's non-technical. And that is exactly how things are going to be happening over the coming years with AI. So it's going to allow the SMB, SIs, ISVs to go out and develop applications, whether it's vision AI applications that can recognize certain instances in stores or shop floors or in factories. And that means that will democratize it all. It will be open to everyone. So that fragmentation, the way I would see it, can be catered for by those organizations using this new set of tools without having to have, the PhDs behind the development of it all.
The access to technology is much easier right now, especially in our ecosystem of the industry, right? So years ago was much more difficult to people not only to understand, but also to adopt these kind of technologies. Now the opportunity is right now in the corner if you want to take it. Huh?
And that's where we take very, very progressive, aggressive steps towards developing and making technology available and scalable to everybody, especially SMBs, where there is such a variety of ideas, of thoughts, of innovation, and pretty much all of them have access to all of the technologies that we at the moment produce.
Absolutely. What kind of business you see in your ecosystem are really driving or having the fastest growth in this moment? What kind of business are really driving that growth?
So I'm very glad you asked that, because we've seen a number of trends that actually just accelerated use of technology. Over the last couple of years, not necessarily just due to the pandemics, but we've seen frictionless kind of explode, or should I say even accelerate to the level that people are now used to new ways of purchasing through the gesture, through voice controls. But we also seen, for instance, Amazon Store is everywhere. That kind of new trend, new experiences, new models of how to interact with technology, how to interact with the industry. We've seen that expanding and grow across a number of industries that are connected. For instance, the most and the biggest noise or the biggest visibility is in industries that were the worst affected: retail, transportation, hospitality, hotels. So all of those industries had to actually not only bring the confidence, but to make sure that they are safe to reopen, to re-engage, to get the consumers back in, to get the consumer confidence. And we see a number of new use cases also that derived as a result. Curb pickup is now almost the de facto standard across all the retails, when before pandemics they didn't even exist. Everybody wanted inside. Now order, or you also see the food delivery services that was not, or so-called new trend, ghost kitchens. So we see basically frictionless being massive across many industries. And there is also that ripple effect. If retail is reopening, if the hotel industry is reopening, the hotel industry absolutely directly attracts transportation, which is airports that were badly affected. Then we have transportation across, like not just cars, but the train lines. And we see a lot of technology deployments happening in those areas where effectively we knew it will happen. It's just now happening much faster, and actually with the new usage models.
Correct. And if I may be even more direct, how a small, medium business can engage with you in this case? Through Blue Star, without Blue Star, but how can we engage on that level?
So Intel is very very, very supportive, and we actually want to connect with all the SMBs. Our Alliance Partnership Program at the moment has 20,000 members, and we would invite any of the small, medium-sized company, ISV, to actually directly just Google Inter Alliance Program and join in there, submit any of your ideas, and somebody will be in contact. Simply because the SMBs, the small companies, the new ideas, we want to foster innovation. We have lots of technologies that we made very easy for anybody to get access to technology, to innovation, to AI. OpenVINO as a toolkit is free to download by anybody. And there is a lot of pre-validated tools, software solutions that people can use, optimize, change, and productize across many of the industries in applications that some of them don't even exist. Because ultimately we want to foster innovation. We want to support small, medium-sized businesses across the whole supply chain, from the design to the consumption side. Because that's where we see the industry and the big, strong growth going forward.
And I would also say, add to that it's a two-way street here, with SMB and the way we work. So Intel's created programs, and there are similar programs in other organizations where we have pre-packaged ecosystem solutions. So again, that's a combination. It might be sensors, hardware, software, cloud services.
As we discussed before.
As a package. And you have some on your portfolio as well that have been pre-validated, pre-tested to really take a lot of the pain out of creating and deploying a solution to their customers. We're trying to speed the time for them to deploy to their customer so they can then move on to the next opportunity and make the next customer happy. But in addition, they can also contribute to the program. So if they've got a really neat solution that isn't part of the RFP or market ready solution type program, they can come to Intel and say, hey, I've got this really neat solution, this combination of software, hardware, sensors, I'd like to bring into the program and have you help me market for me.
Great.
As John, you mentioned, this is something, as example, market-ready solution from our side to make it easy. It's a blueprint. It's a blueprint of what's deployed, what is there, and Intel will then take through our marketing program, through our alliance programs, to actually promote that solution. That will then be promoted to end customers to give them the idea who it is, who is this small company that developed something, what does it make possible. But at the same time, if somebody like ISV company, some software company, has an idea and product that actually could be used across different applications in different industries, we have I would call it like a box of Lego blocks. Simply because that is then going to be marketed towards our big number of system integrators, so that they can actually take, if I simplify to my kids level, they can then take different color, shape, size of the Lego block and build up, use different components to directly and completely address the business problem or requirements to the customer that they work with. And we could actually scale it and offer it as their company's component that actually any of the system integrators could collect, contact them, use in different markets, different segments, different countries, geographies. So we want to promote solutions that are not only available, but we want to foster and encourage and support innovation.
Okay, I have to say that I'm very surprised of something. I mean, when I'm asking about where do you see the biggest growth, you're mentioning let's say a list of a number of different opportunities, but you're not mentioning healthcare. Healthcare is one of those markets where we are very active in this moment, that we see because they have been forced to change. They have been forced to track and trace as they have never done before. And I was surprised that you have not mentioned healthcare in your answers.
Well, it's a huge, first of all, it's a huge segment. I mean, I mentioned the case about the radiologist shortage. It comes with its own set of not legislation, but the criteria that systems that they have to meet and approvals, so that you're not interfering with other key medical equipment in a hospital. But outside of hospitals, in the medical, my local GPs started doing telephone conferencing, video conferencing during the pandemic because they had to. So the first line of a diagnosis was either send me a photo of where you think the problem is, or let's have a quick video consultation. That was unheard of. That would never have happened. It would have taken 20 years, I suspect, or more for that to happen. And what the pandemic has done is it's collapsed that time frame into 2 years. So from a technology perspective, I think whilst there were a lot of negative things obviously about COVID, there've been some really positive things. It's allowing society to catch up with the capabilities that technology will deliver to them. So I think absolutely in healthcare there will be. It's about getting through the certifications for those, and also sometimes it's the legal aspects of it, like who's at fault if something's missed or it isn't missed. But they have that today already with the human intervention.
Correct, you're right.
But Paco, to add to that, if you ask us about any specific industries, we have so many examples, and I'm glad you asked. For instance, expansion of AI, and you mentioned healthcare. We have now, in the healthcare space, for instance, in number of NHS trust hospitals, where the most vulnerable patients, let's say one of the trusts is the Cancer Trust, with number of hospitals, where suddenly they quickly had to increase the safety of the passengers, do
Patients.
I stop? Okay. I'm glad you asked that, because on the AI, we had massive deployments across number of healthcare trust hospitals with the most vulnerable patients.
Yeah.
For instance, a cancer patient trust immediately deployed number of AI solutions where different types of islands of technology existed before, but suddenly now visitors to that hospital, AI cameras, CCTV systems are connected to screens on the walls, connected to the door entrance systems, because they can automatically detect if person, in very simplicity, is wearing the mask, if that person actually washed hands, if those health and safety protocols have been followed. So AI actually, to some extent, is pre-programmed by humans, but there is no way of cheating technology when it comes to following the wash hands, change the gloves, wear the mask, and that actually protects the patients in some of those hospitals. So if you ask any specific in any of the industries, we have too many to mention. We just want to make very clear that every opportunity has to be value driven, and we support ecosystem to scale their solutions across all the industries, all the values, because it's not about deploying technology for technology's sake. It's making all those technologies connected as a holistic system that provides ultimately value to either patients, consumers, retailers,
Correct.
to any of the industries.
Yeah, we are seeing also a lot of the technology that we are also selling and distributing, in the healthcare area, but not only in the healthcare area, are really connecting to each other. We are seeing much more interaction between the printer, security, and the access control and the terminals. All of that, driven into give a better experience to the patient, more security to the patient, and I think this is the key element in the healthcare at the end. But let me jump out this back to the retail, because we always we have been touching also retail, and there is a concept that I think here that IoT or where IoT is playing a significant role is on the real-time insights and how this is impacting, the retail, not only at the big guys again, but also in the small and medium business. How is this real-time insights, let's say, a capacity enabling be more efficient or enabling the efficiency of any SMB?
Yeah, well, I think there's a clamour for people's attention, whether that's from the internet, whether it's from in-store.
Yeah.
And so the real-time element, or the data in motion, data in flight piece, is really important. And to capture somebody's attention, it's got to be relevant, it's got to be timely, and hopefully personalised. And so one of the key ways that is currently being used and developed in the industry in a wide way is Vision AI. So using a display screen with a camera on top, and then analysing the scene in real time or near real time, so that you can determine the type of person walking past the screen, You can maybe see what logos they've got on their clothes. You can flash up, oh, by the way, I see you got this. We've got these things on offer in the store for you. Or you might consider looking at one of these. It might look at skin complexion and say, look, with your skin complexion, these colours would really suit you. This way to the store, if you give this code reference, you'll get 5% discount. But it has to be done while the person is walking past the screen in that case. It's no good doing it 10 seconds later because they'll be gone.
Do you see, John, that is not replacing, but the concept of virtual reality? You think those two concepts can play together, or you see one taking the place of the other one in the retail area?
I think they can play well together, because I think with VR headsets that they've been around for a long while, and they were supposed to take off probably 10, 15 years ago and never quite got there.
Correct.
I think with some of the things we're seeing in the industry at the moment and the moves there, I think over the next 3-4 years, it will get there. Certainly the quality of the headsets is there. And I think you might see a blending where somebody goes into the virtual reality world and then says, I really like that. I'd like to order it, but if you're actually like me, I like to try stuff on first, because I don't know why, but maybe I'm just an odd shape. But things have a habit of not quite fitting in the right places. And so I could get directed to the nearest store where I can go try that on. But I know when I'm walking in there, I'm not browsing around. I know exactly what I want. I know the colour. I know the rough size I want. I can just go in and do it. So I can see, and that's one example, I can see a good blending of it from that point of view.
Okay.
There is a merge or extension of habits or purchasing habits or experiences, merge and making it closer. As we talked about retail, retailers in the past even used to have separate strategies for online and in-store. What we see is that has now merged. And now we even see new models, online to offline, offline to online, something that in the past did not really exist. You order and collect it from the central hub place, being either those lockers at the petrol station or in Tesco. You buy things that basically you can return also to central location without actually needing to return them to specific, let's say, retailer. So new use models, new experiences, new expectations actually also came up very fast. And virtual reality and new technologies, they're all complementary. And those all drive innovation that our ecosystem partners actually can bring up, and we can actually make them reality, because a lot of new consumers expect the current level of technology as a starting point.
Correct.
And I would also say virtual reality won't replace real reality in the same way as we are now at this point in time getting back into going to live events, meeting in person. And it's
technology at the end is
different.
It's a cycle, right? I mean, when I was a kid, we used to use in my city, we used to catch up the tram, and then 10 years later, they say, trams is the past, and they just invest a lot of money to take it away. And now you see trams every single city, using them as the most modern, efficient, and ecological way of transport. So I see this technology going in and out, and also these concepts, maybe they are not the same in 20 years, but they will be also a version of the same concept, But one of the things which is also very interesting to me on the, let's say, cooperation that we have through your aggregator program, is also the multi-vendor angle, So can you tell me, or maybe you have an idea on why this multi-vendor approach is a benefit, for the partners?
I personally, I'd start off by saying that, first of all, no single solution is created by one vendor.
That's clear.
So that's the first key point. And I think we're seeing at this particular point in time, having reliance on one specific area can actually cause a lot of problems if there's a hiccup there.
Correct.
And so by having a multi-vendor approach, it's a bit like second sourcing in some instances. In other instances, by having a multi-vendor approach, it's about complementary approach, by having different things being brought by the different vendors.
So it's much more in the area of the cross-selling opportunity, right?
Exactly. So absolutely, companies, manufacturers would like everything that they make to be the one thing. And in some instances, there's been some real success cases of that in the industry. But the approach, I think, of being open in whatever you're trying to do in standards, connectivity, whatever that happens to be, I think the more open a system is or device is that you're bringing into your solution, the better it is at allowing you to swap things out if there's an issue there.
I would even like to add, multi-vendor approach is direct result of actually supporting creativity, innovation across the whole ecosystem. ISVs, SIs, market requirements, or maybe specific country requirements, because one does not fit all. So we want to address, together with our ecosystem, whatever the business, either problems in specific industries, specific countries, geographies, or whatever the requirements from the end users come. And basically we support this variety and innovation across the whole.
Okay, that was an expected answer, I have to say. Because we are also working from the solution point of view. We are also working on a multi-vendor approach. Of course, as you said, some vendors have got a much wider range of solutions and some others have got, let's say, a smaller or not so wide range of solutions. But at the end is this multi-vendor approach which helps the cross-selling, the upselling, and which means a real benefit for our partners. And this is really one of the best, I don't want to say legacy, but I want to say one of the best benefits that we can offer to our partners.
Paco, if I maybe just give a very, very clear example. Pandemics hit 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Instead of us locking down, we went aggressively, we invested and supported small, medium-sized businesses, ISVs. And very, very quickly, we made turnaround with very creative, innovative solutions in order to monitor, detect, let's say, heat, temperature, in transportation, in the underground. So we were supporting ecosystem to come with the solutions that would actually somehow minimize or localize and reduce the spread of the pandemics, which automatically impacted societies, countries, industries, and enabled some of them to stay open throughout pandemic. Example, in some places, you walk into the building, you have an elevator system, you press the button, but there is a camera that connects directly to the company's HR database of images. It measures your temperature and does not open the escalator because there are other 10 people in the escalator. Maybe tells you, please go through security, and basically they will then do the additional checks. So this is just one of the example, but lot of during the pandemics, I think we invested, was it $20 million? We created number of pandemic solution catalogs that we promoted solutions of all of these innovative small ISVs or SIs, solutions that could help different industries for safe reopening or even keeping them alive, going ahead.
So it's a world dominated by machines, as I said in my introduction. This is
not
I don't know. I'm getting
machines.
scared now, Stevan.
Not necessarily machines, but for instance, example is you have in front of a lot of retail stores entrances, you have a screen, which actually simply count the number of people in the store. And there was let's say CCTV system that was used in combination, connected to your phones, connected to the screens. Which was actually looking at the distance between the people in the store and maybe putting messages, please respect the distance.
Correct.
Or system would immediately see if people are wearing masks and says, please wear a mask. So there was very non-intrusive way in order to drive safe opening and keeping opening of some of the industries like retail.
And it was Stevan, it's innovative thinking, isn't it? Using existing equipment that's already there, maybe beefing up a little bit at the back end with some AI systems, so you can have a camera being the Swiss Army knife of the detection world.
That's very, very interesting, in fact, and I think all these changes, all these technologies which are evolving, they need a kind of basic technology behind. And I want to talk about 5G, how 5G is really impacting in this moment, this digital transformation, So I have a very first question, which is 5G helping to develop AI, or is AI helping to develop 5G? What do you think?
From my side, 5G is one of those three fundamental technologies: connectivity, manageability, security. 5G and AI work hand in hand, so that in real time, due to very low latency between the monitors or the sensors, let's say in the manufacturing environment, 5G is enabling all those sensors that are in production line to in real time report, detect, and find and isolate, remove, let's say, faulty part or part that for whatever is not compliant to what was pre-programmed for the robots. Robots can detect either shape or size or image of the product that is on production line going full. So 5G is enabling real-time responsiveness of the pre-programmed systems, which actually makes the inspection, let's say, of those products faster. But at the same time, 5G with the low latency immediately, in one other example, enables corrective actions. Corrective actions being, in the past, let's say, vending machine. If the coin gets stuck, that vending machine is not operational, which means that consumers cannot get their refreshments.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's not bringing any revenue. It's not delivering what it's meant to. But if the 5G is involved, and if the machine can immediately say or send a message about status of products inside, hey, I'm running low on this product or something, or if it's in location where maybe there is no sale, then suddenly that machine can, through telemetry, which is built in, can report and say, hey, I need help, I need engineer to immediately come so that I can go back to the full operational mode. So 5G is actually enabler for many of the industries, being signage, being detection of the audience, putting the right content, which is relevant for time of day, for industry. If it's raining, if it's hot, whatever they're vending. So 5G as a connectivity in real time with the very low latency also enables totally new business models across any of the industries. Is it check-in to the hotel, virtual check-in? Is it gesture, or is it through the voice? It enables real-time interactivity between whatever the applications in whichever industry there is.
I completely agree with everything you said there. I see it as an enabler to unleash and unlock the value of the AI applications that have been developed. So it enables that transportation, connectivity to places that might not otherwise have been able to connect, to applications that may not have been able to connect. The high bandwidth that's available through 5G allows you to do a lot of things that Stevan's just been talking about. Real-time video in places that you would never have been able to get real-time video, which will then enable you to do remote operations maybe that you might not have been able to do, security of remote telecom towers, lots of different things.
Absolutely, and this is also related to what we mentioned before about real-time insight. How this is impacting, the development of the retail, and I think that could be a critical thing. You also mentioned before something about 6G, right? So give me a break. I was in 4G last year. Suddenly, I'm just forced to understand how 5G is really impacting our lives, and before we are there, you're talking about 6G, in fact, right?
Yes, and that's actually a perfect example of innovation. From our side, we foster innovation, we support, we drive, we strive. We want to work with ecosystem, with new ideas that actually will result in totally new ideas being developed. Intel is a perfect example there. We used to say that the moment we put a shovel and take piece of ground to build a new factory, in reality, that factory would use machines that don't exist, produce chips that we did not invent yet, for the use case and applications that nobody yet even thought about. And 5G and 6G are a perfect example there, because it drives real-time responsiveness and interaction with systems from the manufacturing to industry, to retail, to hospital, to any of the industries, to this extent, even let's say in the marketing campaigns, it gives direct and immediate real-time feedback on which part of marketing campaigns is relevant. Because in marketing organizations, they used to say that half of the marketing budget is wasted. They just don't know which half.
What kind of marketing people have said that?
So that's interesting, because, for instance, brands.
I might be agree, but
so brands would like to know who are the consumers, who are the customers. And in reality, for instance, if you have a digital signage and you have either loyalty program or just detect, is it male, female audience in front, if you can measure and see who buys the product, who basically spends, let's say, dwell time, how much am I looking at that commercial?
Yeah.
Which means, oh yeah, that's interesting for any of the reasons. Or if somebody just skims and moves away, that means it's probably not effective commercial, which means update it, change it to something that actually has a higher dwell time, that I can detect interest in the audience. It could be time of the day, it could be gender specific, it could be product, but automatically the brands are getting the real-time feedback about the product, about interaction, about consumers. And then you can, in the retail store, for instance, connect that to the sales out data, and suddenly you can actually even measure the impact of advertising to sales. And then if you want to go even further, you can actually, on the sales side, connect it to loyalty program that consumer already opted in and volunteered, because then you can promote products which are relevant to that, either through the shopping history or based on the product. If I'm buying shoes for some of my kids, I don't mind buying extra socks, because they know they'll say 30% if you buy now socks. I don't need them maybe now, but I know that I will need them. The kids will grow, they will wear out whatever they have. So it's upsell, it's cross-sell, it's a benefit to both consumer, retailer, and ultimately you can measure the impact.
You get much more information.
Yes.
Much faster.
But you get relevant information.
Exactly. Much faster, much more relevant. Yes. And so you can be much more efficient in your communication. And
80% of decision in a lot of those retail stores are done on the spot.
Absolutely.
And suddenly if you show me something relevant, and you show me something that either through my history, purchasing history, that I opted in and gave them that track because I have loyalty cards in many of the stores. If it's relevant to me, if it's not one-to-many type of advertising being promoted, some product to everyone, but if it's one-to-one, if it's something that is relevant to me, they have my satisfaction, they have my confidence, they have me returning back, they have me promoting it to my friends, and effectively that drives acquisition of new customers and maintaining and keeping existing customers. So it's good for the brands, it's good for the retail, it's good for me too.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I was going to come back to your question about the 5G as well. I think there's one aspect that is different, very different to the previous generations that we've had, and that is the private 5G. So with 4G LTE, you could license in exceptional circumstances some spectrum on that. But with the concept behind 5G, it provides the ability for companies to actually license in specific areas certain spectrum so that they can use that for themselves. And key use cases for that could be a manufacturing plant.
Yep.
And companies like Bosch, Siemens, BMW have already in Germany licensed their own spectrums, but it means now they can have connectivity at high speeds, as Stevan said, low latency throughout their manufacturing plants in a very easy to deploy system, because it's got wide coverage. You know, I think one of the questions that will evolve, and we'll be learning where and how these fit together, is Wi-Fi versus or Wi-Fi and 5G. So in a manufacturing floor, I mean, I've worked on projects where we've done site surveys for Wi-Fi and it all works beautifully, and then a big piece of metal comes through the manufacturing plant or the warehouse, that site survey's out the window.
Hey, well, you're saying something which can be impacting especially our business dramatically, you know, because you are meaning that Wi-Fi and Bluetooth are going to be replaced.
In certain areas, it may be that they'll either be replaced or that they will actually have a technology there that will allow them to do things that they can't today, that's cost prohibitive. And so I think we're going to see a lot of interesting things happening there.
It's cost prohibitive now.
Well,
exactly. We've seen this before. We all have seen this before.
Yeah.
There are two concepts in the 5G which are really critical in this discussion. One is, how is it helping the cost reduction, and also why is it helping to reduce deployment risk? How do you see that?
And I'd say first of all, telcos have a rich experience of deploying technologies that have very adversarial environments in cities, moving cars, people, cranes moving.
Yeah.
And the signal, by and large, works very, very well. Mm. And so the experience from that can now then be brought into the private environments, whether it's a manufacturing plant, whether it's mining, whether it's a hospital or an educational campus, but large campus environments. So you can reduce maybe the cost overhead of deployment, site surveys, having to go back recheck because the infrastructure has changed somehow. You've got new buildings popped up which wasn't there before. It can also help in cost reduction because it allows you to do things that you may not have been able to do before. So actually monitoring your machines real time, in some cases controlling them real time via the 5G network because of the low latency capability that delivers as well.
Just imagine, for instance, all the remote operations, or in the healthcare space, all the real-time connectivity, communication spaces with everybody over the last couple of years being forced to work from home. The new speed, the low latency, what kind of experience that could drive to consumers or to the industries. As John mentioned, in real time getting feedback in the manufacturing environment could be very, very impactful for the manufacturing companies to drive the production costs down, to immediately detect and remove the faults or correct if there is some corrective action needed. So automatically it will drive cost reduction in the production, but also if we spread it throughout the supply chain, and even go to the end users, it will be much faster to get real-time feedback, real-time input, new requirements, new products, new technologies, and ultimately the ripple effect goes through from the manufacturing to the consumption of any of those industries in any of those spaces. And that is actually just making economies faster, more flexible, and easier to even optimize or adopt to whatever the new requirements come.
Yes,
and all in a wireless environment, no cabling, right, in order to connect the
wireless.
two ends. So
yeah, we've been talking about this morning also. Wireless is really the future, and this is what we all like. And then whether it's useful or not, we'll see. It's safe or not, but certainly it's what we all want. Sky's the limit, right? When we are talking about this kind of telecom technology, sky is the limit.
It really is. And I mean, I was thinking as Stevan was talking about the 6G and some of the things you might be able to do with that, and the thought occurred to me, it's an analogy of the roads system, starting off as a small track for carts and horses, and then emerging to single track for a car. Correct. Or early motor cars, and then motorways, and then the motorways aren't big enough, so you have to double that. And the interesting thing is they get filled, and that filling from our perspective are applications, it's data, and its capability.
Absolutely right. I think we should really commit to make a new podcast, in a couple of years about AG technology, right? So that probably would be...
yes.
And I say 2 years, and I'm being probably too late. So that's very interesting. We are talking about low latency. We are talking about real-time insights. And probably if I put all the technologies that we are, let's say, dealing with from the perspective of Blue Star, one of the most impacted technologies and solutions that we are providing to our customers related to those topics is digital signage. So I guess you're seeing also some of those trends in this moment very clear, right? That probably you would not see 2 years ago when we were using 3G or 2G, right?
This is very interesting because it's so easy to adopt to new use models, to new experiences, without necessarily even realizing. Digital signage is now everywhere. There is no impact on anyone's life. We go out, we are impacted, we see it, but without needing to register. Yeah. We go walk through the street and we see digital signage screens in the shops. We see it as a totem for the news, for advertising. We see digital signage everywhere, but it's so easy to get used to it. And digital signage has had a massive transformation because suddenly the content on the screen used to be digitized posters. Instead of paper posters, digitized. But we've seen that all of that has moved now, and a lot of digital signage is now interactive. Interactivity, flexibility, manageability, being able to detect the audience in front, being able to immediately put the content which is most likely relevant for either gender, time of the day, or product, there is so many different ways that we can pre-program the content. So digital signage is now used in not only pure advertising, but getting real-time feedback from the consumers. Digital signage is above the shopping windows, in quick service restaurants. Digital signage is inviting you, is distracting you. You want to go and buy milk. In the shop, it distracts you to get something else. You go get something else. You go to the checkout with that. Digital signage is telling you, hey, special offer on something else.
Yeah.
You buy milk. It says chocolate powder, half a price for you. And it basically, as you leave the store, it actually already attracts you next time to come back. So digital signage is, through the AI, transforming our experiences, our use cases, our own satisfaction levels. So digital signage is something that actually has been fastest growing, and it is going across all industries, from hospitality, retail, transportation. We see screens everywhere. Quick service restaurants. It's probably difficult to find quick service restaurants, whichever brand you want, without any of the advertising screens nowadays. So it's something that cropped up, and pure requirements and need for those industries to either expand or grow have directly impacted on growth and expansion and speed of deployments of those solutions in digital signage across any of the industries.
And I would say that the recent events we've seen, the quality of digital signage leap probably 2 to 3 generations in the 2 years since we've been able to go.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, immense digital signs appearing now with better than real life vision, or my vision at least, and you can create a completely immersive environment with
Correct.
high quality digital signage today, which wasn't the same as 2-3 years ago, in my view.
To be honest with you, immersive digital signage, or digital art, if you want to call it that way, has been only in the artistical side till now. But now we are seeing that is not only an artistic performance. Using that is really a complete customer experience, which can be, let's say, placed in a shop, can be placed in a restaurant. You can be in the middle of the desert simply by putting some screens around. And now it looks real.
What we see actually, digital signage, if we look holistically, all the industries in the last 30, 40 years were focused on logistics. How do I get product in front, which is, we call it back end of the stores. If I specifically, let's say, look in the retail. What has happened in the last 10 years is that industries, like if we stay with the retail, looked into front end. How do I actually attract, distract? How do I actually make user experience, purchasing, product selection? How do I make that? View finding in shopping malls. How do I find which store? How do I find which product in that store? How do I actually get information about the city, about places, about museum? So the front end has been actually seen last 10 years, probably the biggest and the most dramatic transformation, where a lot of use cases that we see now in retail, if we just stop and think, we did not have any of them 3 years ago. But now we can't actually almost imagine how are we going to go in the store, because we are going to feel like, hey, something is missing here. So digital signage is one of those, the most prominent and most visible implementations of transformation on the user experience, user side, user integration. With digital signage, you can talk now. You can interact with them. You could actually ask for advices. You can connect to the sales operator, to assistant. You could actually look into complementary products. You can customize your product. In some of the sports stores, you could actually order customized product. You want to change, let's say, stripe or color or have a text. In real time, you will order it. You can order white goods appliances. And to make it even easier, you can actually give them address where to deliver it, which is ultimately good even for the brand. Rather than having the products in some of the warehouses or in every warehouse, suddenly it's good for them because they will keep it in one central location and spend the logistics costs only once to send it directly to the consumer, rather than keeping it in the warehouses, which actually frees the capital that those retailers, white goods or whatever the product is, actually have buried in the back-end system. So front-end being a lot closer to logistics is actually enabling and helping every aspect on logistics chain.
That's very clear. Okay, so I think we've been covering a lot of technologies, and I think we've been seeing a lot of opportunities. But I think we should really, let's put it this way: I would not like to finish, without addressing a part of the customers, of the partners that might have not been that evident in the past, but they are critical right now. And I think this is also a proposal to them. Let's talk about the ISVs. Why should an ISV consider joining the program, linking with you, linking with Blue Star? What would be the benefit? Why should they join?
So that's actually a very interesting way. The way I would like to put that is that working through Blue Star, working with Intel Alliance Partnership Program, we actually have a lot of predefined, pre-validated, pre-certified, pre-tested environments. So some of the programs like market-ready solutions, which is blueprinting of the solution. Some of the our RFP Ready Kit, which is another program inside our Intel Partner Alliance program, is effectively that so-called Lego box of ingredients. But on the other hand, we have a lot of other tools like OpenVino Toolkit with pre-validated solutions, with pre-validated architectures. Then we have Developers Cloud, where those ISVs don't need to purchase any equipment anymore. They can virtually access any of the Intel's products, any of our platforms, any of our software solutions, where they can upload and virtually test the performance and choose the right application, right CPU, right architect. It's not just CPUs, it's CPUs, VPUs, GPUs. They can FPGAs. They can upload whatever content they're developing and they work on developing, and they can virtually develop it without necessarily having to do heavy investment in buying the equipment, because some of those could be prohibitively expensive for small ISV who is a couple of people company who just has an idea. We want to enable them all. We want to help them all to be able to foster innovation, to foster their ideas, whichever market they want to go for, and pretty much through our IPA program, Interpartnership Alliance program, to support them. Blue Star, as being a member in our IPA program, is directly bringing the benefits and scaling potential to those ISVs that want to develop something, that have some ideas.
Absolutely.
And I would go back to something I said earlier on, the ecosystems. So the ISVs are very creative, come up with fantastic ideas. They need platforms in order to be able to deliver those platforms. And who better than somebody like Blue Star or Intel help assist them, first of all, optimize their capabilities on a platform so that when they go to the customers are getting the best performance and best experience that they can, with the guidance of companies like Blue Star and Intel.
With the direct access, just to add, with direct access to any engineering support that they might need, either software, hardware, performance, AI, we have all that on offer to any of the ISVs to help them, because their success is simply also measurement of our own success, and ultimately to the end users, to the industries that we serve.
Okay, that's very interesting. So, before we finish, if I would be an ISV, where would you, let's say, recommend me to pay attention to?
Yeah, well, if I could give you the direct advice,
please.
I'd be a rich person. But particularly at this point in time, I would look at where there is a shortage of workers. And there are numerous places at the moment. I mentioned one in an earlier comment around radiologists.
Yep.
That's just one example. There are lots of specific sectors and industries that have a shortage of workers for various reasons. If you have an application, if you can develop something in an area where there are worker shortages that will help companies overcome that shortage by enabling other of their workers to be more efficient, to do the jobs maybe of the workers that you're missing, that's a rich vein there. That's the black art, is first of all understanding what skill sets you have and the knowledge of that sector, and then secondly developing something that will help address that.
Okay, so it's been a long podcast today. So thank you very much indeed, John O'Donell and Stevan Dragas from Intel, to have opened some technological windows for us and for our audience this time.
Because we also appreciate the time and opportunity to be invited and support and help some of your customers too.
Yeah, I think this is the most important. Some of our customers will be very happy to benefit from this conversation, because I think they have a lot of opportunities of joining our both programs.
Working together.
Excellent. So thank you very much.